Hey everybody, so back with a video, actually 1 year to the day when I post the Folk Legacy massive update. Just kind of had a trade going, and somebody had asked me, Peter specifically, from the Netherlands, what my top 10 Folk Legacy favorite albums are, and that's a very hard question, but I figured I would, just kind of uh, I think I got more than 10 here, but these are kind of my favorite ones. And keep in mind I really haven't listened to I've listened to a good percentage of the catalog, but I wouldn't say that I've listened to it. Some of these albums, the reason why they're my favorites is because I probably listened to them, 40, 50 times, things like that. So I'll show you a few here in a second. So there we go. 1 year ago, still drinking Genesee beer. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So my first one, this is just a great kind of banjo. I mean, it's Howard Bersin. He only put out, I think, one other album. Was actually with his wife, Sally Rogers. I have that album as well, too. But this is pretty much his solo, that other one's more of like a duet kind of thing. Kind of a call and response sort of singing thing going on. But Howard Bersin's Cider in the Kitchen is just a fantastic song. Lots of reels and hornpipes and things like that, the jigs and what have you. There's a few songs on here like Joshua Gone Barbados, which is a Rick Von Schmidt song. So, of course, that's sort of a classic folk song. I believe Tom Rush covered it, I think, on Classic Rush, I want to say is the name of the album that it was on. But really, there's really cool songs. Greasy Greens, Biscuits, which is a sort of a blues song. It's good. I can say I've listened to this quite a bit. There's a track on here, Handsome Molly, which I believe is sort of like a Folk Legacy kind of one other album here that I'll show you. They basically was recorded on that, so it's kind of a cool kind of wink back to this is number 74 in the catalog. This came out in 1980. Doesn't really sound like 1980 or 80s esque, if you will. I mean, it's very traditional folk music, so it's a great one. I think if it's not on this one, let me see real quick here. I don't know if it's on this one. No, it's on the first one. So this is number 36, Frank Prophet Memorial Album. Frank Prophet actually put out the first album on Folk Legacy. He sort of I believe either his aunt actually wrote the song Tom Dooley. So he sort of was it's not on this one, but that's obviously on the first one. But the Memorial album I like a little bit better than the first Frank Prophet album. I think some of the songs here sound, to me, they're a little more, a little darker, I think. The first album definitely has all the ones that are kind of the, folk standards. There's a few of those, along with other songs that Frank wrote. But these are kind of, that sort of that darker B-side mentality where, they're a little more of a grower of a song. You don't listen to them the first time and say, oh, that's a great song. You listen to maybe 5 or 6 times. Like I said, Blackberry Wine is one that really sticks out in my mind. Sort of just a song about, just a guy that used to make wine, and he got, everything was good until he started making Blackberry Wine. There's another great track on here, Satan, Your Kingdom Must Come Down, which is sort of like a... kind of like a Son House sort of John the Revelator kind of, Satan, your kingdoms must come down, kind of with hand claps, kind of that. Really, it's really haunting. This is a really great album, probably one of my favorites. So really cool stuff on there. Let's see, just kind of put some of these into perspective here. Let's see. Second here. Okay. We'll go with this one next. This is another one of the early ones. This is actually number 4. Fleming Brown. Again, this is some more banjo music. You have, I believe, John Henry's on here. As I Go Rambling Around, which is a Woody Guthrie song. The Cuckoo, Railroad Bill. this is a really good Flag of Blue, White and Red. I mean, this just really good classic folk songs. Very traditional. He's a very good banjo player. Um, I mean, it's just the way that he plays is just fantastic. So he really didn't do too many other albums. He did record one other album that was a banjo player, Hobart Smith, who came, I think, maybe number 14 or so. But he recorded some of that where it's, kind of the style that he kind of channeled his one from. But again, another good banjo. So really, if you like banjo music, these first three are probably would be the top three kind of things. A little more, kind of as we move along, I guess, here. This is another one. This is like the second or third Folk Legacy album that I had. But Michael Cooney, this is number 35, and this came out in '68. And Michael Cooney is sort of like a one-man folk festival. He plays all these different instruments, banjo, guitar, you name it, he's played it. But there's some really good ones on here. Turkey in the Straw, of course, that's a classic tune. Worryin' Blues, Fanning Street, Rigs of the Time, Creole Bill, John Henry, a couple of Lead Belly kind of 12-string guitar kind of blues sort of influence stuff. Again, just great stuff. There's a track on here that's just a spoken kind of thing. It's New Grape, which is New Grape is sort of a like a grape soda, and that was their sort of jingle. I got a ice cold new grape, and basically he does that. So there you go. It's an American folk song, a new kind of thing. So really, really cool stuff. Red Cross Store Blues. That's another Lead Belly song. The Bankers and the Diplomats Are Going to War. The Cumberland Mountain Bear Chase, which is, probably like a 7-minute kind of song. It's just, his tour de force. Very great stuff. He has several other albums. I think he put out 2 or 3 albums on Front Hall. I have those as well too, but I would say this is sort of his crowning achievement on Folk Legacy. All right, so and then to kind of put these next 2 into perspective, this is 5 Days Singing, Volume 1 and Volume 2. By the New Golden Ring. I think it's number 16 is the regular Golden Ring, which was sort of just a group of people that played folk music just kind of getting together. This one, number 41 and 42, this came out in '71. So Folk Legacy has definitely been established for, I think about 10 years at that point. But a lot of these are sort of, the Folk Legacy family, some of the artists that are featured. Mike Cooney is in it, so Michael Cooney, he's in it. Howie Mitchell, so the person we just talked about. Caroline Payton, Sandy Payton are in it. Ed Trickett, we'll talk about him in a moment. I think Gordon Bach is on this too. Sarah Gray, Joe Hickerson, again, we'll talk about him. So you have a lot of, it's kind of like just these gigantic sort of, Phil Spector-ish kind of folk things. Everybody's singing, one person maybe leading the entire thing. But there's just great tracks on here. Waterbound, Benjamin Bowmaneer, Ginny's Gone to Ohio. That's a really good. There's some really great tracks on here. Rollin' Home. That's another one that I really enjoy. Of course, the Galveston Floods on here. So there's it's kind of like the folk music that you would do when you get together with a ton of people and you just kind of sing. So it's like, obviously all their instruments are here. You got, the hammered dulcimer, banjo, the mountain dulcimer, guitars, spoons even are in there, So it's really cool, stuff in that. So, if you get one, you got to get 2 because they're really, it's really basically a double album. That's really what it comes down to. But one of the other people, and this is his solo album, Joe Hickerson, I'm sorry. Added some extra letters in there, but this is Drive Dull Care Away, Volume 2. Of course, there was a Volume 1. This is probably my favorite. There's an awesome song on here just called "Working on the New Railroad," and a lot of it is again stuff that he's with the same folks that were on the New Golden Ring. But it's kind of like the I've been working on the railroad, sort of the the next step of it. Working on the new railroad with the mud up to my knees, and it's kind of like a call and response kind of thing. There's the main line, and then everybody in the group sings the second part of it. Very cool stuff. I mean, I believe I forget what his backstory is. I probably should have looked up a lot of this, but I think he either worked at the Library of Congress or something like that, and just had all this access to all these great folk songs. I forgot to mention too, most of the folk legacy ones, they come with these great booklets. So some of them weren't released with booklets, but there's, of course, you have the lyrics and things like that, and then of course kind of putting the album in perspective. So it's an amazing experience. That's one of the reasons why I kind of fell in love with this label, because it's just just great stuff. I'll talk a little bit about Gordon Bach. I don't know how many albums that I've gone through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I don't. You said 10. Maybe I'll do like 15. I don't know. Gordon Bach. He's sort of the the flagship person on folk legacy. I think he's really carried it. He kind of carried it from its early days into where I believe it's at now. But these are two of his great albums. Peter Keg and the Wind, probably his most famous one. There's this really long song on here, obviously the title track. It's like 15 minutes long, just like a long story, kind of amazing song. It's almost like The Doors, the end, basically, but it's sort of a folk song. Mr. Aeneas, Hang On John, Cape Ann. I mean, all of these are just really good. Clear Away the Morning. I mean, I don't think there's a bad track on this album. So really kind of the main folk sound. Maine, of course, one of the states. Gordon Bach used to be a sailor and work on boats and things like that. So it's really, he's singing from the heart. Another album of his I really dig is this one. It's a Rogues Gallery for 12-string. The whole album is all 12-string, so it's kind of like a concept album. But it's again just some great tracks by Gordon Bach. And then I'll show you one more, well, a couple more here. Another one was Ed Trickett. Ed Trickett is sort of like he's kind of like a house musician, so he kind of does a lot of backup vocals, second guitar on a lot of the folk legacy recordings. So this one's called People Like You. This one came out in '82. His stuff is good. I mean, it's there's definitely some pretty good songs. He's very traditional, a traditional folk singer. He doesn't really have the virtuosity, I think, like Gordon Bach does as far as with the guitar, but he kind of makes up with it with his lyrics and his vocals and things like that. So, not to be denied, he's definitely a good artist to pick up. Several albums, and of course, Gordon Bach. This is kind of the Peter, Paul, and Mary of folk legacy. It's Gordon Bach, Ed Trickett, and Anne Mayo Muir. This one's Turning Towards the Morning, which probably is their best and probably their most noted. Just really, really cool stuff. Again, when you really, they're solo artists on their own, and then, but combined, they're just amazing. Whereas, with Peter, Paul, and Mary, they were a group first, and then they tried to do the solo thing. So it's like they kind of worked backwards, and I think the results were a lot better personally. So, very cool. Kind of the this is the Peter, Paul, and Mary that Peter, Paul, and Mary would listen to, I would assume. So, two more. Well, I'll do four more. Just some really interesting chestnuts. These are kind of like one album, and that was all that they did. But to me, I think they're really good. John Wilcox, Stages of My Life. John, he kind of sounds like Townes Van Zandt. So if you like Townes Van Zandt, this is sort of right up your alley. He does Yankee Lady, which is probably the most notable song on here. I believe that's a Jesse Winchester song. A lot of it are songs that he's written, but very cool. I really dig this album. Like I said, that's probably the best way to describe him, is he just sounds like Townes Van Zandt. Just sort of how his vocal inflection is. His songs aren't necessarily as dark, but still very cool. This one is very hard to find, probably the rarest of them all. and just because it kind of appeals to a lot of people outside of folk music. This is really the only blues album that Folk Legacy did. It's called Talking About My Time, Eugene Roads. Pretty much this is a prison record. It's just him basically sitting in the music room. There's somebody like plunking on the piano in the background in a music room across it, but there's that that bleed. You hear the doors opening and closing and people talking in the background. But I believe Eugene Roads, I want to say, I think he was friends with Blind Boy Fuller, or I think he played, I don't know if he maybe went around with him a little bit, played some, played some venues and things like that, but very cool. I mean, this is basically as much of a field recording as you can get. The guy in prison singing folk songs, so it's just very amazing stuff. The guitar is not 100% in tune, so it has that very ethereal kind of quality to it. Another one this is Hank Ferguson, which he was in the same prison as Eugene Roads. I want to say this might even have been recorded by the same guy that did. I'm not sure. I think it might be. For some reason, I think I remember reading. Oh, no. So he recorded, the same guy that did the Eugene Roads also recorded Hank Ferguson, but once Hank Ferguson kind of got out of prison, then they re-recorded a lot of the songs. So, if you're fans of Johnny Cash, a lot of these songs on here. Of course, Walls, The Walls. I think Johnny Cash calls it The Wall, I think is what he calls it on his, but it's the same song. What else is on here? Busted, of course, but I'm busted, cotton is down to $0.25 a pound and I'm busted. Wreckavel 97, of course, the Wabash Cannonball, Long Black Veil, 9 Pound Hammer. I mean, this is just great stuff, just amazing folk music. It should be heard by all. And the last one, this is just cool because I actually got to meet this artist. This was somebody that happened after after the fact. I think maybe about 2 or 3 months later. This is Cindy Callett, working on Wings to Fly. This is another one from '81. So it's kind of '81, '82. There's some good records that came out in that period. More contemporary. Sounds a lot like Joni Mitchell, I would say. Very good guitar player. And of course, Sam and I had the pleasure of seeing her live, and we met her, obviously. She was with Gray Larson, which he has a couple albums too. I have some of his stuff. So I have my own little Folk Legacy family kind of collection of records of people that were on Folk Legacy and maybe recorded something else, or somehow they have a tie-in. But this is really good. If you like I said, if you kind of like Joni Mitchell kind of stuff, probably, the title track, Working on Wings to Fly, or just Wings to Fly, probably the best song on the album, but very, very cool. I like the way that it sounds. I really don't listen to a lot of female folk singers, but Cindy Callett is definitely one that I do enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed that. Quick little, that wasn't quick, it was about 18 minutes. So, but there you go. That's my 2 cents. So hope you enjoyed it.